At least one of the party was enjoying himself, Darcy thought, more sour than wry. A swift look at Miss Bingley and Mrs. Hurst showed them obviously dissatisfied with their company, both loftily ignoring any man fool enough or brave enough to attempt to catch their eye. Hurst half dozed in a chair near the fire, holding a cup of punch negligently in one hand. Darcy understood his boredom, but disapproved of the impoliteness of such behaviour, and he turned pointedly away to look back out at the dance floor. Bingley was smiling brightly as he revolved around his current partner, and Darcy had no doubt that time was flying by for him. For his own part, he willed the clock to move faster. It would be necessary to stay at the assembly some time longer, an idea he regarded with gloomy dissatisfaction. He had little desire to engage in conversation with these rustic folk, wishing only to return to Netherfield, and there seek the tranquillity of the outdoors, or the cosiness of his prepared bedchamber. The music came to an end, and the clapping was more exuberant than appropriate, and a moment later he heard his name being called. He turned as Bingley, eyes shining, cheeks pleasantly flushed, hurried up to him. "Bingley," Darcy returned, though rather stiffly. "Oh, come, Darcy," Bingley said. "I must have you dance. I hate to see you standing about by yourself in this stupid manner. You'd much better dance." "I certainly shall not. You know how I detest it, unless I am particularly acquainted with my partner. At such an assembly as this, it would be insupportable. I have already danced with your sisters, and there is not another woman in the room whom it would not be a punishment to me to stand up with." "I would not be so fastidious as you are," cried Bingley. "For a kingdom! Upon my honour, I never met with so many pleasant girls in my life as I have this evening, and there are several of them, you see, uncommonly pretty." "You are dancing with the most handsome girl in the room," said Mr. Darcy, looking at the eldest Miss Bennet. "Oh, she is the most beautiful creature I ever beheld, but there is one of her cousins sitting down just behind you, who's very pretty, and I dare say very agreeable. Do let me ask my partner to introduce you." "Which do you mean?" he asked, as he turned round and looked at the lady in question. She was seated next to a plain young woman, whom Darcy vaguely remembered as the elder Miss Lucas. He felt as if he had received a punch to the stomach. The cousin was not a blonde, but a red-headed beauty with twinkling dark eyes. Even as he watched, she lifted one delicate eyebrow and tilted her head with a slight smile. It was obvious she was listening to the conversation and found it amusing. With a quick inhale of breath, Darcy realised with shock that she was, in fact, more than handsome enough to tempt him. "Yes, Bingley," he said, regaining at least some of his equanimity. "Would you be so kind as to have your partner introduce the lady?" Bingley looked startled, and then nodded eagerly. "Of course. Wonderful. Please wait a minute." Bingley's partner, whom he introduced as Miss Jane Bennet, was thankfully free. Within 5 minutes, Darcy was standing in front of the red-headed beauty, waiting for the necessary introduction. "Elizabeth," Miss Bennet said, "may I please introduce you to Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy? Mr. Bingley, Mr. Darcy, may I please introduce you to my cousin, Miss Elizabeth Stowe?" The lady curtsied, and the gentleman bowed, and Darcy said, "Miss Stowe, might I have the honour of the next dance?" "Of course, Mr. Darcy," Elizabeth replied.